The ultimatum. The stellar assembly had governed the galaxy for 9,000 years. It was an achievement that no single species could claim alone. 623 civilizations had joined together, pooling their knowledge, their resources, and their philosophies to create something greater than themselves. They had ended wars, cured diseases, and spread life to barren worlds across 3 spiral arms of the Milky Way. Every species that joined the assembly learned the same fundamental lesson. Resources were finite. Space on habitable worlds was limited. Energy, food, medicine, all of it had to be distributed with maximum efficiency. This was not cruelty. This was mathematics. This was survival on a galactic scale. The efficiency protocols had been established 7,000 years ago, refined over millennia by the best minds in known space. Every member species followed them without question. Those born with severe disabilities were humanely terminated within their first year. Those who developed chronic illnesses or lost significant function were offered peaceful euthanasia. The elderly who could no longer contribute were honored with dignified ceremonies before their termination. It was logical. It was merciful. It freed resources for those who could use them productively. No one questioned this system because it worked. Galactic civilization flourished. Standards of living rose. Technology advanced. The assembly grew stronger with each passing century. Then humanity applied for membership. Earth was not particularly impressive by galactic standards. Humans came from a violent world with crushing gravity and extreme weather. They had developed nuclear weapons before they developed interstellar travel, a troubling sign of poor priorities. Their planet was divided into nearly 200 separate governmental entities that spent more time arguing with each other than cooperating. But they had potential. Their science was crude but showed promise. Their culture was chaotic but adaptable. And they desperately wanted to join the greater galactic community. The Assembly Council voted to accept Earth as a probationary member. It was a standard arrangement. They would be given access to basic assembly technology in exchange for following assembly protocols. Most species were grateful for the opportunity. Ambassador Marcus Rivera presented Earth's petition to the Assembly Council in the Grand Chamber on the capital world of Nexus Prime. He was a career diplomat in his 50s, calm and professional in every way. He had prepared for this moment his entire life. His speeches were flawless. His cultural research was impeccable. The Council approved Earth's probationary membership unanimously. For 6 months, everything proceeded normally. Earth received its first shipments of advanced medical technology. Human scientists studied assembly energy systems. Cultural exchanges began. It seemed that humanity would integrate smoothly into galactic civilization, just like the 622 species before them. Then Chief Medical Arbiter ZYX began the standard medical compliance review. ZYX was a Corinthian, a species that resembled tall mantises with crystalline exoskeletons. He had served the medical directorate for 300 years, overseeing the health protocols of dozens of member species. The review was routine. Every new member underwent the same process. The medical directorate would examine the species' population data, verify that they followed proper efficiency protocols, and issue a compliance certification. ZYX expected no problems. Humans were primitive in many ways, but surely they understood basic resource management. The data arrived from Earth on a Tuesday morning, Nexus Prime Standard Time. ZYX reviewed it with his morning stimulant beverage, expecting to approve it within the hour and move on to other tasks. He nearly dropped his data tablet. According to Earth's own census data, approximately 18% of the human population fell into categories that should not exist. Physical disabilities, cognitive impairments, chronic illnesses, genetic disorders, age-related decline. All conditions that required immediate termination under assembly protocols. But these humans were not being terminated. They were alive. More than that, they were educated, employed, participating fully in human society. Earth's data listed blind physicians, deaf engineers, paralyzed scientists, elderly teachers, and thousands of other individuals who should have been peacefully eliminated decades ago. The numbers were staggering. 1.4 billion humans currently alive who violated basic efficiency protocols. Millions more born each year with conditions that warranted immediate termination. ZYX checked the data 3 times, certain there had been a translation error. There was no error. Humans genuinely believed that severely disabled individuals had the same value as healthy, productive citizens. They spent enormous resources keeping these people alive. They modified their buildings and transportation systems to accommodate them. They developed special technologies for them. They treated them as equals. It made no sense. It violated every principle of civilized society. ZYX immediately called an emergency session of the medical directorate. 20 senior arbiters gathered in the chamber, reviewing Earth's data with growing alarm. The discussion lasted for hours. Some argued that humans simply did not understand proper protocols yet. Others insisted this was evidence of a deeply flawed culture that might contaminate other species if not corrected immediately. By the end of the session, the verdict was unanimous. Earth must be brought into compliance with galactic standards. The Directorate drafted Directive 9247 and submitted it to the full Assembly Council for approval. The council chambers filled quickly as word spread about the human anomaly. Representatives from all 623 member species attended. Some came out of curiosity. Others came out of concern. A few came because they sensed this might be historically significant. Senior Counselor Thane, a dignified Valerian whose species had been Assembly members for 6,000 years, presented the directive to the Assembly. His forearms gestured gracefully as he explained the situation in his calm, measured voice. Earth maintained a population segment classified as biologically non-optimal. These individuals consumed resources disproportionate to their productive capacity. They required specialized accommodation that diverted resources from optimal citizens. Their continued existence violated fundamental efficiency protocols that had governed galactic civilization for millennia. Directive 9247 gave Earth 18 months to harmonize with Assembly standards. All humans classified as severely disabled, chronically ill, or significantly impaired must be humanely terminated. All future births showing genetic markers for such conditions must be prevented or terminated immediately after birth. Earth would establish proper medical screening facilities and termination centers. Assembly medical teams would provide assistance and oversight during the transition period. Failure to comply would result in immediate expulsion from the Assembly, loss of all technology and trade agreements, and potential sanctions including economic blockade and military quarantine. The vote was called. 622 member species voted in favor of Directive 9247. Earth's single vote against was recorded for the official record. The directive was approved and transmitted to Earth immediately. Ambassador Rivera received the directive in his quarters on Nexus Prime. He was preparing for a reception celebrating the 6-month anniversary of Earth's membership. He read the document 3 times, his hands beginning to shake. 1.4 billion people. The directive wanted Earth to kill 1.4 billion people. He thought of his daughter Sophia. She was 8 years old and had cerebral palsy. She used a wheelchair and spoke with difficulty, but she was brilliant. She loved mathematics and music. She wanted to be an astronaut when she grew up. Under Directive 9247, she would be among the first to die. Rivera requested an emergency meeting with Chief Medical Arbiter ZYX. It was granted within the hour. ZYX received him in a sterile white office overlooking the crystalline towers of Nexus Prime. The Corinthian's compound eyes reflected the afternoon light as Rivera sat across from him. "I need clarification on Directive 9247, Rivera said, keeping his voice steady. "You are asking us to terminate every human being with a significant disability or chronic illness." "Correct," ZYX replied. "The number is approximately 1.4 billion based on your own census data. Additionally, your medical protocols must be updated to prevent future non-optimal births. And if someone develops a disability later in life? An accident, a disease? They would be offered dignified termination, yes. This is standard across all Assembly species. It prevents unnecessary suffering and frees resources for productive citizens." Rivera felt his chest tighten. "I have a daughter with cerebral palsy. Under this directive, what would happen to her?" ZYX tilted his head, a gesture that might have been sympathy in his species. "She would be among those humanely terminated, yes. As the representative of your species, your family's compliance would demonstrate Earth's commitment to proper protocols. She is 8 years old. Age is irrelevant to biological status, Ambassador. Your daughter consumes resources. She requires specialized care and equipment. She will never achieve optimal function. By Assembly standards, her termination should have occurred at birth or diagnosis." Rivera stood slowly. His hands were clenched at his sides. "And if Earth refuses this directive? Then you will face the consequences outlined in the directive. Your species is young and weak. The Assembly is old and powerful. The mathematics are quite simple." Rivera looked out the window at the gleaming city below, the pinnacle of galactic civilization built on 9,000 years of progress. He thought of Sophia's laugh. Her determination to do everything other children did, even when it was harder for her. Her dreams of touching the stars. "Thank you for the clarification, Arbiter ZYX, he said quietly. "I will transmit this information to my government immediately." "I am confident Earth will make the correct decision," ZYX said. "All species do eventually. It is simply a matter of accepting reality." The directive reached Earth 3 days later. Within hours, it had leaked to every news network on the planet. Within 24 hours, every human being knew what the Stellar Assembly was demanding. The reaction was immediate and volcanic. Protests erupted in every major city. Millions took to the streets. Government buildings were surrounded by crowds demanding that Earth refuse the directive. Religious leaders of every faith condemned it as an abomination. Scientists and doctors released joint statements calling it barbaric. But there were other voices too. Some argued that compliance was the only option. The Assembly controlled advanced medicine that could cure diseases Earth still struggled with. They had clean energy that could solve climate change. They had technology that could feed billions. Refusing the directive would cost human lives through lost medical treatments alone. Better to sacrifice some to save many. These voices were shouted down, but they existed. The United Nations called an emergency session. Every nation sent representatives. The debate lasted for 2 weeks. It was broadcast live across the planet. Billions watched as humanity wrestled with the most important decision in its history. A mother from Kenya spoke, holding her son's hand. He was 12 years old and had Down syndrome. "You are asking me to murder my child," she said, her voice breaking. "You are asking every parent like me to become a killer. I will not. I cannot." A veteran from Japan addressed the assembly from his wheelchair. He had lost his legs in a peacekeeping mission decades ago. "I have served humanity all my life," he said. "I have sacrificed for our species. And now I am told I am a burden. That my sacrifice means nothing. That I should die to please aliens who have never known me, never understood what I have given." A blind programmer from India spoke through an interpreter. "I write code that runs in hospitals around the world. My work saves lives every day. But because I cannot see, they say I have no value. They are wrong. They are so profoundly wrong that I lack words for it." One after another, people spoke. Disabled citizens and their families. Medical professionals who had devoted their lives to helping impaired patients. Teachers who worked with special needs children. Elderly people who had spent decades contributing to society. And between these testimonies, government leaders debated the political and strategic implications. Military advisors warned of Earth's vulnerability if the assembly turned hostile. Economists calculated the cost of losing galactic trade. Scientists mourned the loss of advanced knowledge. But in the end, it came down to a simple question that a young girl asked during a school presentation broadcast globally. She was 9 years old and had autism. She stood at the podium with her father beside her and asked, "If we kill people because aliens tell us to, what kind of humans are we?" The vote was held on a gray morning in New York. Every nation cast its ballot. The results came in slowly from time zones around the world. When the final tally was complete, 97% of Earth's nations had voted the same way. Earth would refuse Directive 9247. Earth would withdraw from the Stellar Assembly immediately. Earth would return to its solar system and have nothing more to do with a galactic civilization built on the corpses of its most vulnerable citizens. Ambassador Rivera was given the honor of delivering Earth's response personally. He requested an address before the full Assembly Council. It was granted, though many councilors expected him to beg for more time or propose a compromise. The council chambers filled once again. All 623 species sent representatives. They expected negotiation. They expected humanity to have learned its place. Rivera entered the chamber alone. He walked to the central platform and activated the translation system so every species could understand his words. "Members of the Stellar Assembly," he began. "I come before you to deliver humanity's response to Directive 9247. The chamber fell silent. 3 weeks ago, you demanded that we kill 1.4 billion of our people. You demanded that we terminate our children, our parents, our friends. You demanded that we become like you." He paused, looking around at hundreds of alien faces. "We have considered your demand carefully. Every human was given a voice. Every opinion was counted. Our answer is no." Confusion rippled through the chamber. "We will not kill our disabled. We will not terminate our sick. We will not eliminate our different. Not one. Not ever. Furthermore, humanity formally withdraws from the Stellar Assembly effective immediately. We reject all benefits of membership. We renounce all obligations. We will return to our solar system, and we want nothing more to do with you." The confusion turned to shock. In 9,000 years, no species had ever voluntarily left the assembly. Senior Counselor Thane rose from his seat. "Ambassador Rivera, I must warn you that this decision is catastrophic for your species. You cannot survive without assembly support. You have limited technology. No allies. You will be alone and vulnerable." Rivera looked at him steadily. "We are aware of the risks. You will condemn your entire species to hardship and possible extinction. Is this worth protecting defective individuals who contribute nothing? They are not defective, Rivera said quietly. They are human beings. And yes, it is worth it. We would rather die as humans than live as what you are. And what are we, Ambassador? Rivera did not hesitate. You are a civilization that has spent 9,000 years perfecting the art of murdering your own children. You call it efficiency. You call it mercy. You call it logic. But at its core, you are killers who have made peace with killing. We will not become that. We cannot become that. The chamber erupted in outrage. Dozens of species demanded Rivera's immediate arrest. Others called for military action against Earth. But Rivera continued speaking, his voice cutting through the chaos. Before I leave, I want you to know something. My daughter Sophia has cerebral palsy. She would have been one of your 1.4 billion. She uses a wheelchair. She speaks with difficulty. By your standards, she is defective and worthless. He pulled out his personal data pad and activated a holographic display. Sophia's face appeared above the platform, smiling and bright. Last month, she won her school's mathematics competition. She plays the violin, though it takes her 3 times longer to learn each piece than other students. She wants to be an astronaut. She dreams of seeing the stars up close. He looked around the chamber at silent alien faces. You looked at her and saw nothing worth saving. We look at her and see everything worth fighting for. That is the difference between us. Rivera deactivated the display and turned toward the exit. Do not contact Earth again. Do not visit our system. We have made our choice. You have made yours. We have nothing more to say to each other. He walked out of the stellar assembly chambers for the last time. Behind him, 623 species sat in stunned silence, confronted for the first time in millennia with the possibility that their 9,000-year-old certainty might be wrong. On Earth, billions watched Rivera's speech broadcast across every screen and every channel. When he finished, when he walked out of that chamber with his head high, something changed in humanity's collective spirit. They were alone now. Truly alone in a vast and hostile galaxy. They had sacrificed advanced medicine, clean energy, and the wisdom of 623 civilizations. They faced isolation, hardship, and potential extinction. But they had kept their souls. They had refused to become monsters. And in the end, that mattered more than all the technology in the galaxy. The journey home would be long. The years ahead would be difficult. But humanity would face them together, with all of their people, leaving no one behind. That night, Marcus Rivera held his daughter Sophia close and whispered, "You are worth everything. Every single thing. And we will never let anyone tell us otherwise." Sophia smiled and hugged her father tight. Outside their window, Earth spun through the darkness, small and alone but unbroken. The stars watched in silence, waiting to see what humanity would become. The reckoning. The first 3 years after withdrawal were the hardest humanity had ever faced. When Earth severed ties with the stellar assembly, it lost access to technology that had transformed human civilization almost overnight. The advanced medical treatments vanished. Assembly engineers remotely disabled the clean energy cores they had installed. Communication networks linking Earth to the stars went dark. Supply chains collapsed. Research partnerships ended abruptly. People died. There was no way to avoid that terrible truth. Cancer patients who had been receiving assembly treatments found themselves back on Earth-only medicine. Some survived. Many did not. Energy shortages rolled across continents as humanity scrambled to reactivate old power plants and build new ones. Food distribution networks struggled without assembly logistics technology. The Assembly Council watched from Nexus Prime with grim satisfaction. Their models predicted complete societal collapse within 5 years. Humanity would come crawling back, desperate and broken, willing to accept any terms. They would learn that defying galactic civilization had consequences. Every species learned eventually. But humanity did something unexpected. Instead of breaking, they got angry. Dr. Chen Wu was 42 years old and had been blind since birth. Before withdrawal, he had been part of an international team studying assembly propulsion systems at the Global Science Institute in Geneva. His specialty was theoretical physics, and his unique way of conceptualizing mathematical problems through sound and spatial reasoning had made him invaluable to the project. After withdrawal, the assembly confiscated all their research data and equipment. Dr. Chen's colleagues fell into despair. They had been so close to understanding faster-than-light travel. Now they were back to square one with no hope of catching up to galactic technology. Dr. Chen refused to accept defeat. He assembled a new team from scratch, recruiting scientists who shared his determination. Many of them were people who would have been terminated under Directive 9247. There was a physicist with severe autism who could visualize 11-dimensional space in ways that neurotypical researchers could not. There was an engineer with Parkinson's disease whose trembling hands betrayed a mind that could solve mechanical problems no computer had cracked. There was a mathematician who was deaf and had developed entirely new theorems by approaching problems through visual rather than auditory reasoning. The assembly had called them defective. They called themselves motivated. They worked in a converted warehouse in Geneva with equipment scrounged from universities across the planet. Funding came from private donors and governments desperate for any hope of technological independence. They failed constantly. Experiments exploded. Theories collapsed under scrutiny. Equipment malfunctioned. Some nights, Dr. Chen wanted to give up. Then he would remember Chief Medical Arbiter ZYX's cold voice explaining why his life had no value. He would remember the casual certainty with which the assembly had voted to kill 1.4 billion humans. And he would return to work with renewed fury. 3 years after Earth's withdrawal, on a cold November morning, they tested their first prototype faster-than-light engine. It was crude and inefficient, barely managing to move a small probe faster than light for 3 seconds before burning out. By assembly standards, it was pathetic. But it worked. Dr. Chen Wu stood in that warehouse surrounded by his team, listening to the data readouts converted to audio through his specialized interface, and he wept. They had done the impossible. A species the assembly had dismissed as too primitive, led by researchers the assembly had deemed worthless, had independently developed FTL technology in 3 years. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Dr. Chen became an overnight hero. His face appeared on every screen and publication across the planet. But when journalists asked how he had accomplished what seemed impossible, his answer was simple. "They told us we were broken," he said, his sightless eyes looking toward the cameras. "They told us we had no value. We wanted to prove them wrong. We needed to prove them wrong. That need drove us further than any of them will ever understand." The engine was just the beginning. Across Earth, researchers were attacking 100 different problems with desperate determination. Medical technology, weapon systems, artificial intelligence, agricultural innovations, manufacturing processes. Everything humanity had lost when they left the assembly, they set out to rebuild and improve. And everywhere, at the center of these efforts, were the people the assembly had wanted to eliminate. In Sao Paulo, a research team led by a woman paralyzed from the waist down developed a neural interface that allowed paralyzed patients to control machinery with their thoughts. Dr. Maria Santos had designed the system to help herself walk again. Within a year, it was being adapted to pilot spacecraft, operate industrial equipment, and control defense systems. Her disability had given her insights that able-bodied engineers had missed. In Mumbai, a laboratory made breakthrough discoveries in quantum computing. The lead researcher was a man with severe epilepsy who experienced the world differently during his seizures. Those altered states of consciousness allowed him to conceptualize quantum phenomena in ways traditional approaches had not considered. His defective brain had become humanity's secret weapon in the race to develop advanced artificial intelligence. In Berlin, a team of elderly researchers, many in their 70s and 80s, developed breakthrough techniques for extending human lifespan and cognitive function. The assembly would have terminated them decades ago for being past productive age. Instead, they used their years of accumulated knowledge to ensure future generations would not have to choose between wisdom and youth. 5 years after withdrawal, Earth was unrecognizable. The struggling, isolated planet the assembly expected to find was thriving. Humanity had not merely survived. They had evolved. The assembly's observation probes sent back reports that contradicted every prediction. Earth had constructed a fleet of 47 faster-than-light capable vessels. Settlements had been established on Mars, Europa, and Titan. Mining operations stretched throughout the asteroid belt. Research stations orbited Jupiter and Saturn. In 5 years, humanity had expanded from one planet to an entire solar system. But the most shocking discovery was on Earth itself. The probes detected thousands of non-human life signs scattered across the planet. Chief Medical Arbiter ZYX reviewed the data with growing alarm. At first, he thought the sensors had malfunctioned. Why would aliens be living on Earth? Then he understood, and his crystalline exoskeleton seemed to dim with the weight of realization. They were refugees. Not every species accepted the assembly's efficiency protocols without question. On worlds across the galaxy, there had always been those who resisted. Parents who tried to hide disabled children. Doctors who refused to perform terminations. Citizens who spoke out against the system. These people were criminals under assembly law. They faced imprisonment, forced termination of their loved ones, or execution. For 9,000 years, they had nowhere to run. The assembly controlled the known galaxy. There was no sanctuary, no safe haven. Those who fled were eventually caught, and their punishment served as a warning to others. But now there was Earth. Word had spread through underground networks that connected resistance movements across dozens of worlds. A species called humanity had rejected Directive 9247. They had chosen isolation over compliance. They were accepting refugees. The first ship arrived 11 months after Earth's withdrawal. It was a small transport vessel carrying 43 members of a species called the Taurian. Among them were 15 children with genetic conditions that marked them for mandatory termination. Their parents had stolen the ship and fled, hoping against hope that the rumors about humanity were true. Earth welcomed them with open arms. More ships came. Hundreds, then thousands over the following years. Refugees from dozens of species, all of them marked for death by their own civilizations. Parents fleeing with disabled children. Adults who had developed conditions that required termination. Elderly individuals who refused to report for their mandatory dignified ceremonies. Doctors and activists who could no longer participate in the killing. They all found sanctuary on Earth. Settlements were established to accommodate different species' needs. A colony in the Australian outback housed species that required hot, dry climates. Another in the Canadian Arctic served those who needed cold. A third was built underground in the mountains of Switzerland for species that could not tolerate Earth's atmosphere without modification. It was not easy. There were misunderstandings, conflicts, and challenges. Some humans resented the alien presence. Some aliens struggled with Earth's environment and culture. Resources were stretched thin accommodating so many refugees. But slowly, carefully, they built something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. The children were the bridge. Human children and alien children grew up together in integrated schools. They played the same games, learned each other's languages, and discovered that differences that seemed so important to adults meant nothing to them. A friend was a friend, whether they had 2 legs or 6, whether they could see or hear or neither. Dr. Chen Wu visited one of these schools 5 years after Earth's withdrawal. He listened to a blind human girl teaching sign language to a group of Taurian children whose species communicated through bioluminescent skin patterns. He heard a deaf alien boy helping a human classmate navigate the playground using echolocation. "This is what they wanted to destroy," he said softly to his colleague, a Taurian scientist who had fled with the first refugee ship. "This is what they called inefficient." His colleague, Dr. Krill, placed a gentle claw on Chen's shoulder. "On my world, I was told my daughter's condition made her worthless. That she would never contribute anything to society. And now she is studying to become a doctor. She wants to help others like herself. She has more value than 1,000 assembly arbiters." 6 years after Earth's withdrawal, the Stellar Assembly faced a crisis that would change everything. The Krell came from beyond the galactic rim. No one knew where they originated or what they wanted. They appeared at the edge of assembly space with a fleet of black ships that absorbed sensor scans and ignored all attempts at communication. They did not negotiate. They did not make demands. They simply attacked. The first world to fall was a mining colony called Verdun. Population 4 million. The Krell descended without warning and left nothing alive. The assembly responded with overwhelming force, assembling a military fleet from 20 member species. Each contributed their most optimized soldiers and most advanced weapons. The combined force was the largest military operation in assembly history. The battle lasted 8 hours. The assembly fleet was annihilated. 94% casualties. The survivors reported something that chilled the council to its core. Every tactic they had attempted, the Krell had countered. Every strategy they employed, the Krell had anticipated. It was as if the enemy knew exactly what they would do before they did it. In a way, they did. The assembly had spent 9,000 years optimizing its member species for specific functions. Soldiers were bred for combat, engineers for construction, scientists for research. The system was incredibly efficient. It was also incredibly predictable. Every species followed the same doctrines, the same tactics, the same strategic principles. The Krell had studied assembly warfare for decades before attacking. They knew every pattern, every response, every limitation. They knew what the optimized soldiers would do because the optimized soldiers had been programmed to do exactly that. Flexibility, creativity, improvisation, these qualities had been systematically eliminated as inefficient. Over the next 3 years, the Krell advanced steadily toward the galactic core. World after world fell. The assembly tried everything, new weapons, new formations, new commanders. Nothing worked. The Krell adapted to every change within hours. Billions died. Hundreds of worlds burned. The assembly's perfect efficiency had become its fatal weakness. After 3 years of continuous defeat, Senior Counselor Thane called an emergency session. The council chambers that had once held 623 confident species now held the representatives of a desperate, dying civilization. We face extinction, Thane said, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. Our military forces cannot stop the Krell. Our scientists cannot predict them. Our strategies fail before implementation. We are losing this war because we cannot adapt. Chief Medical Arbiter ZYX stood slowly. He had aged visibly over the past 3 years. The crystalline brilliance of his exoskeleton had dulled. There may be one option, he said quietly. One we have not considered because of our pride. The chamber fell silent. The humans, ZYX continued. They have not been optimized. They maintain diversity that we eliminated millennia ago. They're disabled, they're different, they're unpredictable, all the variations we call defective. Perhaps that diversity gives them something we lack. You cannot be serious, a delegate shouted. You want us to beg help from primitives who rejected our most fundamental principles? I want us to survive, ZYX replied. The humans have developed FTL technology independently in 6 years. They have thriving settlements across their solar system. They have absorbed refugees from dozens of our species. They are doing things we said were impossible. Perhaps we were wrong about them. Perhaps we have been wrong about many things. The debate lasted for 2 days. Many delegates refused to even consider approaching humanity. Others argued that survival outweighed pride. In the end, desperation won. The Council voted by narrow margin to send a diplomatic mission to Earth. They chose Chief Medical Arbiter ZYX to lead it. He had issued Directive 9247. It seemed fitting that he should be the one to face humanity now. The assembly ship entered Earth's solar system 6 years and 4 months after humanity's withdrawal. It was intercepted immediately by 3 human vessels. The ships were smaller than assembly cruisers but bristled with weapons of unfamiliar design. They moved with aggressive precision, boxing in the assembly ship and demanding identification. ZYX transmitted his credentials and his request. He wished to meet with Earth's leadership to discuss a matter of galactic security. After an hour of silence, the human ships transmitted coordinates for a meeting on Earth itself. ZYX descended to the planet alone, as humanity had demanded. No guards. No weapons. No assistance. He came to Earth as Ambassador Rivera had once come to Nexus Prime, vulnerable and hoping for mercy. The meeting was held in Geneva, in the same building where the United Nations had voted to refuse Directive 9247. ZYX was led into a conference room where 5 humans waited for him. He recognized Ambassador Rivera immediately. The man had aged, his hair grayer, his face more lined. Beside him sat Dr. Chen Wu, the blind physicist whose work had revolutionized human technology. Next to Chen was Dr. Maria Santos in her wheelchair, now Earth's Minister of Defense. There was Dr. Krill, the Taurian refugee who had become humanity's ambassador to alien refugees. And at the head of the table sat President Amara Okonkwo, a woman in her 70s who had been elected specifically to lead Earth through its isolation. Chief Arbiter ZYX, President Okonkwo said. The last time you met with our representative, you informed him that his daughter should be killed. Please explain why we should listen to anything you have to say now. ZYX had prepared speeches. Diplomatic overtures. Carefully crafted arguments. But standing before these humans, he found that he could not deliver them. Instead, he spoke the truth. We are dying, he said simply. An enemy called the Krell is destroying the assembly. We cannot stop them because we cannot adapt to their tactics. Our optimization has made us predictable. We need help. We need what you have, diversity, creativity, the ability to think in ways we eliminated long ago. You need the defectives, Dr. Chen said quietly. Yes, ZYX admitted. We need the defectives. We need the very people we told you to kill. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Ambassador Rivera spoke. My daughter Sophia is 12 now. She is studying astrophysics. She still wants to be an astronaut. Every night, I am grateful that we refused your directive. Grateful that she is alive. And you want to know what makes this moment particularly satisfying, Arbiter? ZYX said nothing. You came here alone, Rivera continued. Unarmed. Vulnerable. Asking for our help. Just like I stood before your council 6 years ago. Now you know how it feels to be powerless before someone else's judgment. We do, ZYX said. And we deserve whatever judgment you render. But please understand, billions of innocent beings across the galaxy are dying. They did not vote for Directive 9247. Many of them opposed it. They do not deserve to be punished for our collective mistake. President Okonkwo leaned forward. If we help you, what changes? What do you mean? The Assembly has operated on the same principles for 9,000 years. You have killed countless billions of your own people because they did not meet your standards of efficiency. If we save you from the Krell, will you simply return to those practices? Will you issue new directives demanding that your members eliminate their disabled? ZYX looked at the floor. I cannot speak for the entire council. But I can tell you that this war has exposed flaws in our civilization we refuse to see. Many of us are questioning principles we thought were absolute. If you help us, if humanity saves the assembly, that fact alone will force change. You will prove that diversity has value. You will prove that we were wrong. Dr. Santos spoke from her wheelchair. And if we refuse? If we let the assembly fall? Then the Krell will eventually come for you too, ZYX said. They do not discriminate. They do not negotiate. They simply destroy all organized civilization they encounter. If the assembly falls, Earth will stand alone against them. You may have your revenge on us, but your children will pay the price. The 5 humans looked at each other. No words were spoken, but some silent communication passed between them. We will discuss your request and give you our answer in 24 hours, President Okonkwo said finally. You will remain on Earth as our guest until then. You will be treated with courtesy, as we treat all visitors to our world. ZYX was escorted to comfortable quarters. He spent the night looking out at the city of Geneva, watching humans and aliens moving through the streets together. Taurian children playing with human children. A Velith elder being helped across the street by a human teenager. A blind human woman guiding an alien who had lost a limb in some past tragedy. This was what he had wanted to destroy. This was what Directive 9247 had targeted. And it was beautiful. The next day, ZYX was brought back to the conference room. The same 5 humans waited for him, along with several military officers and advisors. President Okonkwo spoke without preamble. Earth has decided to help the assembly against the Krell. But we have conditions. Name them, ZYX said. First, Earth remains independent. We are not rejoining the assembly. We will fight as allies, not as members. Second, Directive 9247 is permanently rescinded. No species will be required to terminate their disabled, ill, or different ever again. Third, any individual from any species who wishes to seek refuge on Earth will be welcomed. The Assembly will not interfere with our immigration policies. Fourth, after the war ends, the Assembly will formally apologize for Directive 9247 and acknowledge that humanity's choice to refuse was morally correct. I accept on behalf of the Assembly Council, ZYX said without hesitation. I will recommend that they accept all conditions. I believe they will. Then we have an agreement, President Okonkwo said. Dr. Santos will coordinate with your military command. Earth's fleet will deploy within the week. Dr. Chenwu stood and approached ZYX. The Corinthian towered over the blind human, but somehow Chen seemed like the larger presence in the room. One more thing, Arbiter, Chen said. When this war is over, I want you to meet my research team personally. I want you to see the people you called defective. I want you to understand exactly what you almost destroyed. I would be honored, ZYX said quietly. Truly honored. The war turned within 6 months of humanity's intervention. Earth's fleet was smaller than assembly fleets and less powerful by raw specifications. But they fought in ways the Krell could not predict. Human commanders used unconventional tactics. Disabled soldiers brought perspectives that created new strategies. The diversity that the assembly had spent millennia eliminating became humanity's greatest weapon. A blind admiral named Chen developed sonar-based targeting systems that worked when visual sensors were jammed. A deaf tactical officer created communication protocols that could not be intercepted. A commander with autism saw patterns in Krell movement that neurotypical analysts had missed. An elderly strategist combined ancient Earth military history with modern technology in ways no young officer had considered. The Krell had adapted to fight assembly predictability. They had no defense against human creativity. 3 years after Earth joined the war, the Krell were pushed back beyond the galactic rim. Their invasion had failed. The Assembly had survived, barely, with humanity's help. In the aftermath, the Assembly Council gathered for a historic vote. Chief Medical Arbiter ZYX presented the motion himself. Directive 9247 was formally rescinded. All efficiency protocols regarding disabled and impaired individuals were made voluntary rather than mandatory. The Assembly issued an official apology to Earth and to all individuals who had been terminated under previous policies. The vote was unanimous. 623 species voted yes. And for the first time in recorded history, Earth was invited to cast its vote as an honored ally. Ambassador Rivera, older now but still sharp-eyed, stood before the Council. On behalf of humanity, we accept the Assembly's apology. We acknowledge the courage it took to change principles held for 9,000 years. We look forward to a future where all species can coexist without requiring anyone to sacrifice their people. He paused and looked around the chamber. But we will not rejoin the assembly. Earth will remain independent, allied with you but not governed by you. We have seen what happens when one civilization tries to impose universal standards on all beings. We choose diversity instead. We choose independence. We choose to walk our own path among the stars. The Council accepted Earth's decision. Some delegates were relieved. Others were disappointed. But all of them understood that humanity had earned the right to make their own choices. That night, Marcus Rivera returned to Earth for the last time as ambassador. He retired from diplomatic service and went home to spend time with his daughter. Sophia was 15 now, brilliant and determined. She had been accepted into the astronaut training program. Her dream of touching the stars was becoming real. Rivera stood in his backyard looking up at the night sky, his daughter beside him in her wheelchair. Somewhere up there, 623 species were rebuilding their civilization with new principles. Somewhere out there, refugee colonies thrived under Earth's protection. Somewhere beyond the visible stars, the Krell were retreating into whatever darkness had spawned them. "Dad," Sophia said softly. "Did we do the right thing? Leaving the assembly, I mean. Fighting for people like me." Rivera looked at his daughter, brilliant and brave and alive. He thought of Dr. Chen Wu and his faster-than-light engine. He thought of Dr. Santos and her neural interfaces. He thought of the thousands of refugees who had found sanctuary on Earth. He thought of the future that was possible because humanity had refused to become killers. "Yes," he said simply. "We did exactly the right thing. We chose to be human. That will always be the right choice." Sophia smiled and squeezed her father's hand. Together they watched the stars, knowing that humanity's place among them had been earned not through power or efficiency, but through something far more important. They had proven that every life has value. That diversity is strength. That compassion is not weakness. And that sometimes, the hardest choice is also the most human choice. The galaxy would never be the same.